Tick, tock, tick, tock. Time is perhaps the only thing we all have in common. Everyone has 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 4 weeks a month. Now you may have two main questions. One, why is he using his hands a lot? And two, well, who is he? The answer to the second question is straightforward. Hello, I'm Pradyun Krishnan. I study at AICS, NYP4, and the answer to the second question, when I was doing research on how to give a TED Talk, I looked up TED Talk on YouTube, and I found that in every single thumbnail, I kid you not, every single thumbnail on YouTube, it was always, hands shown like this, or body language. So I wanted to honor that tradition and keep that going in this TED Talk. Now, I'll start off by telling you something about myself, and then move on into a more broader perspective. So I moved here about 4.5 to 5 years ago. Before that, I lived in India. And in India, I had a simple life, a normal routine. I came home from school in a school bus, ran upstairs to my apartment. In my apartment, we had 4 blocks, A, B, C, D. I lived in the D block. And we always, threw our bags on the ground in the apartment, ran outside and played cricket. Now, cricket is a sport mainly played by India, England, South Africa, and Pakistan. So a lot of people who don't know what it is, just ask anyone from England or India in the audience, they'll explain it to you. Now, it never got boring, because every day we used to play different games, and it was always cricket, and it was always fun. Because it was always the D block, so us, against the A block. And we always had training sessions, and then the finals would be at the end of the month or something, and it was always fun. But we also played different games. We played this game called Master Chef, which is basically you recreate a dish with stuff you find on the floor. So you have sand, leaves, flowers, and stones, and whatever. And you have to recreate a dish, and the one that looks best wins. Now, it was all fun. And it was really, really fun to just go outside every day and play. But one day, I was playing outside, and my dad, who's in the audience, called me up and called me up to the apartment. And I ran upstairs. I was thinking about all the bad or guilty things I did that week and how I could justify them and think of excuses. I'm sure you guys do that too. And then he told me that they got me a pet. Now, to the Indians in the audience, I'm sure you can relate. A pet in India always means a dog. Okay, it's always a dog, and it's not any type of different dog. It's always a Labrador, and it's one of those aggressive ones. It's not the ones you see on the streets in Amsterdam, which walks next to you. It's the one that you hold the leash and the dog walks you, and you don't walk the dog. Anyways, but he told me it was a giraffe, and at this point I was confused. And he told me to go over to my mom, and I was walking along, and I saw a balcony, and I looked over, but there's nothing there. But my mom had a glass and metal rectangle in her hand, and this was my first exposure to an iPad. And inside of that glass rectangle, there was an animated giraffe. Now, I used to, watch a lot of animated movies, so I was able to recognize it. But it was one of those talking apps we had back in the day, and it was called Gina the Giraffe. And they told me that if I was responsible enough and fed it about once a day and played mini games 10 times a day so the giraffe wouldn't get bored, they would give me a real pet. And I was excited. So then my routine changed. From going outside and playing every day until when it's time to eat dinner and come back, I used to come a little bit early so I could feed Gina and then eat dinner myself and play 10 minutes of mini games with her, because she wouldn't get bored, of course. But then afterwards, I was playing outside another day, and my dad called me up, and I was thinking about what other ridiculous talking app there was, but he told me that we were going to move to Amsterdam. Now, this was a shock to me. In India, whenever you hear the word foreign, you always relate it to America, and it's always America. You can't think of any other country when they say you're moving abroad. So when they told me the Netherlands, I assumed it was part of the United States, but I was wrong. I realized it was a totally different continent, Europe, and a totally different country, a totally different city with a different culture. But I was still excited because I loved adventures. When we landed here, on the first day when we landed, when I was walking out the airport, I kid you not, I was walking and I saw a Chihuahua. It was the first time I saw a dog like that. And I was really intrigued, so I was looking at it and walking forwards, and I tripped over and fell face first. The first day we landed. I know, very good start. But anyway, yes, I looked outside every day, and it was always great. And nobody played outside, and especially cricket. When I said the word cricket early on, I could see a bunch of blank faces. So a lot of people don't know what cricket is, and nobody played cricket, and it was really dark and gloomy, and well, nobody really played outside at all, except when it was a sunny day, maybe once in, 3-4 months, there would be some kids playing football, but I didn't know Dutch, so there was always a language barrier that I could not break, and it was always awkward. And I faced this one moral enemy, this arch nemesis, if you will, every day before I was on the waiting list for school, so I had to wait for school. So this arch nemesis I faced every single day was called boredom. I had no idea what to do. And well, my mom faced the same enemy too, because I asked her about 5 to 6 times a day, what do I do? What can I do? What is there possibly to do here? And then I resulted in playing with my only friend, who stood by me from India to here, Gina the giraffe. And I ended up feeding her more about 3 times a day and playing more mini games. And it turns out if you feed her too much, then she gets really fat. So you have to reset the account and so forth. And then I discovered this thing called the App Store. In there, I realized there were more talking apps. So I could get a cat, a dog, a frog, and whatnot. And I also found YouTube and Google, and I watched random stuff on YouTube and looked up questions that I wanted to know the answer of on Google, and it was all fun. And then I realized that when I did get into school, there was always, in the beginning, always a language barrier, because they didn't understand what I was saying, I didn't understand what they were saying, so the only thing I looked forward to was coming back and playing on my iPad. And I realized that this was a massive change, from going outside and playing every single day, to coming back home to just simply play with my iPad. And then I realized that maybe it was only me. Maybe it was me who made the shift from playing outside to going on my iPad. And maybe the world hadn't moved that much. So a couple of summers back, when I went to India for a visit, I saw my cousins, one of who is 4 to 5 and the other one who's 7 to 8. And I realized that they already know how to do every possible thing, but nobody plays talking apps. They play Minecraft, Temple Run, Fortnite maybe. But the point is that they moved on too. So they play an hour outside, but mostly inside, on their phones. And this I found was very interesting, to see that it wasn't only the change I made from moving to India from here that affected my life, it was also everybody else around me. And now, I know this is pointless advice given to DPs, because I know you guys don't have time and you have exams and prelims or whatever, but if you have time, I'm not saying that you will, just sit down, close your eyes, and think about what the world was like 2, 3, or even 4 or 5 years ago. And I can assure you, when you open your eyes again, you'll be stressed about all the exams you have, but you'll also realize how much the world has changed. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Now, I want to take a step back and look at the world on a more broader perspective. On the past century and decade, there have been many civil rights movements, many movements and protests that have manifested themselves in the world we live in today. There have been many revolutionaries over the past few decades and century, but I think that there is still one problem that we face in the modern world. And although all these protests have manifested themselves in this world, and all those protests had one vision of making the world a better place, I agree, the world is a far better place now than it was back then. But there's still one issue we face, and that's division. Let's take the US as an example. In the US, we see that there is a lot of division between the right and left. I'm talking about politics. The right wing and left wing. There's always division. There's no in the middle. There's no center right, center left. You gotta choose. And nobody wants to listen to the other side. Nobody wants to listen to opinions. It's simply, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. And I found this truly astonishing. The point that you're trying to convince the other person of your political opinion, but you very well know they're not going to get convinced, and you're not going to get convinced by them. It's a futile effort. And there's so-called journalists, I'm sure you've seen on YouTube, who go around trying to have rational discussions or political discussions with people. But it's still the same pattern. It's simply, I'm right, you're wrong. My side is correct, you're wrong, I want you to convert. And it's a futile effort. And I think that this is what I define as division now. Now, I, from time to time, ask myself, was this the world that Martin Luther King dreamed of? Was this the world Nelson Mandela dreamed of? Was this the world Rosa Parks or Anna Hazare or all the revolutionaries dreamed of? Was this the world every single protester who is sitting out in the rain thinking of a better world dreamed of? I say no. I say although it is a better world than back then, there's still so much division. And I find this truly astonishing. So I want to ask you, is this the vision of all those people who came before us and all those movements and protests? Or is this division? Tick, tock.